there's brand awareness, which is the long-term effective side of marketing, and then there's lead generation, which is the long-term efficient side of marketing, which is I need those things now. But it doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of groundwork as a coach to build a business and a reputation. And but Dean Batchelor, who is the partner at Platinum Group, where I was a turnaround guy when I first met him, he says, Cronin, I asked him, I said, Dean, how do you get new clients all the time? He says, you find one, you make a friend, you do a great job, and you'll get more.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues podcast, formerly Career Coaching Secrets. I'm Pedro, and today I'm joined by Paul Cronin, who has identified one of the most painful ironies in entrepreneurship. Most founders build their business for freedom, only to discover one day that the business depends entirely on them for decisions, relationships, knowledge, and results. What makes Paul's work crucial is his focus on helping successful companies worth 10 to 150 million plus that look valuable from the outside but are actually trapped by the founder dependency, making them far less transferable than they appear. Paul specializes in converting founder dependency into genuine transferable enterprise value, working at the intersection of strategic execution, leadership depth, and succession readiness to identify where value is being created versus where it's trapped. His upcoming book, The Founder's Trap, addresses the gap between building a profitable business and creating a truly valuable asset that can perform, scale, and command premium valuation without heroic dependence on the founder. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thanks very much, Pedro. That was a very nice introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, Paul, you're the one to blame. I'll put it like that. You created that all by yourself. So I'm just following on your shadow. Okay. Now, great to have you. Okay. And I'm a comic book nerd. Sorry about that, Paul. I like to rewind a bit, get to the first edition,
That's
because
awesome.
every coach has that moment where they look at their life and say, yeah, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Right. So when was that for you, Paul?
Yeah, that was I became a turnaround guy when I moved to Minnesota, working to help companies that were failing, going into a situation and turning them around. And after 7 years of doing that, I said, I'm helping everybody else, save a bad situation. But what I found out was that the elasticity of the culture and the problems would bounce back. And it's like, why am I feel like I'm wasting my time. So I decided not to work in the business where I'm working with failing companies. I said, why don't I work with companies that are actually healthy and help them, create enormous value through their business? Because I learned so much as a turnaround guy, but I could carry that forward to help people who are open to it, to take their company to the next level. So I decided to work with the healthy companies and put all my effort into that. And I get bored. It's like people ask me, well, why don't you just run a company? It's like, well, one company is boring to me. So, having multiple clients and multiple CEOs to work with keeps me going, keeps me excited about life.
Okay, you remind me of my dad actually in Brazil. He was a consultant, and he kept telling me, you know what? I'm tired of these guys calling me, and they're always like in major problems, major issues. It's nothing. It's never something that they're in a health spot, right? And whenever he was talking with them, sometimes they hid stuff from him. It was so weird. Like he was there to help them, and at the same time, they're trying to, let's not tell him about this, and trying to pretend everything is fine. So does that feel like it for you? Like that was one of the main drives that moved you to work with healthier companies? Let's put it like that.
Well, I think what you just said is really important about. So I'm a coach, not a consultant, and nothing against your dad, but consultants are supposed to have all the answers, right? And that's part of the problem, which I never accept the fact that I'm supposed to have all the answers. You guys have the answers, so I look to engage people in a coaching relationship, and I make sure they understand that they're responsible for execution, right, and for getting things done, and they're responsible for providing information to me so I can help them and guide them. It's kind of like if you think about the sports world, right? Some people never want to be coaches, but some great players become coaches because they want to help others grow, and they also like individual growth. I know me, I love team growth. I'm a team sport person, and so it's an invitation. When people say to me, Paul, why don't you go out and sell more? It's like, well, it's not about selling, it's about an invitation. Hey, Pedro, do you want to work together? There's some opportunities that I believe I can help you climb that mountain and get further, get farther, but you have to invite me into that relationship. That's the strange thing about a coaching relationship. It's a quid pro quo. It goes both ways.
Mm. I love how you pinpoint the difference, okay, about coaching and consultants, because like you said, consultants have all the answers, right, and coaches have all the questions, by the way. Now I want to understand the shift, okay, that usually happens in the coaching space. Is like from I'm helping people to I'm building a real business around this coaching, okay.
Sure.
Now sometimes it's the first paying client, sometimes it's the first invoice, but at the end of the day is an identity shift. So how did that look like for you?
Yeah, again, being a turnaround guy, you go in as the expert, you're taking control that they give you. They never give you any equity or anything like that, but they say, okay, come in and fix me, right? And the whole concept of, fix me became to be strange and weird. And it's like, I was fulfilled for a while, but that, again, it wasn't a mutual connection. And the idea of having all the answers was not, I was a good student and things like that. I mean, I was in the honors program, but I never wanted to be the guy with all the answers. I didn't like that. I wanted to be part of a team. And I recognized that coaching was being part of a team. And it was interesting. Vern Harnish had just come out in the late 90s with, Rockefeller habits, and he was starting the whole coaching industry. And then, the CEO Roundtable is a peer-to-peer kind of coaching organization. So I saw the industry, growing. And I said, well, that's kind of my archetype. And because it's kind of like in life, you get pulled to a place where, your passion is. And so I get pulled into it. And it was really interesting because I had a partner of a CPA firm call me one time and said, Paul, I have this client and he runs a dental lab. And I think what he needs is coaching. I don't think he needs consulting. I think he needs someone to come alongside him, which is the phrase I really enjoy. And I said to this guy, he says, who do you know who could be a coach? And I hadn't decided coaching yet. I said, it's me, right? So I just stepped right
I'm the
into
guy.
it was like the opportunity presented itself. And so I just stepped right into it. And then I started working with this guy. And it was an interesting story. I want to keep it relatively short, but we really enjoyed each other for the first 6 months. And then he decided he wanted to make me a CEO. And I was like, time out. I think that's a rule breaking thing. I'm not sure if it is, but I said to this guy, I said, why don't you do this? You have a board, you have your CPA, you have your attorney, you have your advisor, there's three of them. Why don't you have them interview a number of candidates? I'll be one of them. And if they believe that I'm the right fit for you, then I'll consider it. But right now, I don't want people saying, "Well, Cronin uses coaching, position to do some voodoo magic on the CEO to on the owner of the company to get a CEO spot." I didn't want that to be. I didn't want to cross a line at all. But that's how it started. I mean, I thought about it. I got invited into the opportunity. I jumped on it, and then sooner than later, I was back in the CEO role. And I'm like, ah, and
Mm.
I turned around this company. I grew it for 2 years, but it's funny how people are, right? We had an equity deal that was supposed to vest in 2 years, and he let me go just before the vesting. So that was a little bit disappointing, to say the least.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. That's interesting. And one thing I really want to know, and I kind of browsed through it already in the introduction, and you kind of mentioned it also. It's like after you got rolling, right, Paul? Who are the people
Mhm.
that kept showing up? Because in the early days of coaching, sometimes we see coaches trying to help everyone. Sometimes they didn't niche down, or even they did or did not. It really depends on the coach. But the ones you realize, okay, this is my tribe, the people I can work best with.
Yeah, that's a great question. That took a little bit of time. It took me 3 years to land 5 clients. I'm a good salesperson. I'm not a good marketing person. And so getting the word out that, hey, Cronin's now a coach, he's not a turnaround guy, and he's not, running a company anymore. And letting the centers of influence, the accounting firms, the lawyers, the advisors, the other advisors to the business owners, letting them know that's a lot of work. And but at the end of the day, I joined a coaching program called Scaling Up. I had started with a program called EOS Traction, and it was good. It was a good basic program. Metaphorically, I'd say it's high school level training, whereas Scaling Up is at least college level, right?
Mhm.
And when I walked through I had been doing EOS for 7 years, and when I walked through the doors of the Scaling Up training program, I was being trained by a lady who started and sold 2 financial tech companies, and there was 16 of us in a room, and to this day we still stay in touch. So it's my peer group. To answer your question specifically, it's my peer group that keeps me going. Other coaches from around the world that we meet once a month, and in one case I meet with 2 other guys every week, where we're just checking in and making sure that we're doing well and staying on top of new things. A quick aside is that, so my friend Don Hache, brilliant, brilliant guy, in and out of coaching a number of times, bought and sold a number of businesses and grew them. Really amazing. He calls me out in one of those programs. I'm not really good with technology. He says, Cronin, listen, AI is here. You need to jump on AI and get started with it, whether you like it or not. So he kicked me in the shorts about 2.5 years ago. And I started using it and I love it. I mean, I don't know how I lived without it in the past. The research capabilities alone are fantastic. And like, I'm in the tip of the spear where I hadn't been before. So it's people like that. It's your peer group. It's your, they're going through the same, battles, and challenges. I mean, it's kind of a lonely world if you just be a coach by yourself. Even when you're with your clients, that's the fun part, right? But the time between spending time with your clients, there's a ton of work doing marketing, doing selling, developing new products and services, following up. You're a one-man band in a lot of cases. So that peer group are they're my tribe. They're the ones that listen to me when I want to whine, and because we're not supposed to whine, in public. So, but they're there for you, and then they hold you up, they kick you in the pants, they congratulate you. Yeah, that's the team. That's my tribe.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. Interesting that you have that support, right? And the peer group and all that. But if you had to pinpoint that elevator pitch, that who do you serve, Paul?
I serve owners of businesses that are profitable. They're generally between 10 million and 150 million, and they realize at some point in time there's more in front of them, and they're not sure what they're missing, right? So at some point in
Mm,
time, they wake up and they look around and it's like, I could use some advice, and they don't believe it's a consultant. It's not specific to, hey, fix this pipe, or fix that. It's more general. I'm reading all these books. What am I missing? And that's a lonely world too. The CEO role, the ownership role, is a very lonely world because you're the top of the pyramid, right? And if you don't have, so then they go to their peer groups. And even the peer groups, those are great. I love peer groups, and I love how they help each other and they create brothers and sisterhood. But at the same time, it's a facilitated process that has a level of limitations. Although Gartner Group points out that 65% of all executive decisions are determined by what a owner learns through their peer group. So they're
mm,
being heavily influenced in that group, right?
right.
So, but when I look at them, I'm looking for profitable organizations who are looking to go to the next level. And what I do is I teach them and introduce them to things that they're not getting from their peer group. They're not getting from their accountant or their attorney or their insurance guy, because they're missing a very valuable point about how to drive value in their business. And so what I do is niche down. I've started with coaching. I've evolved from the coaching concept of EOS, scaling up, great game of business type of thing, where we're just scaling companies. Those owners and those coaches are looking at bottom line profit. That's only one of the buckets that creates value. What they're missing is the management of risk. So the risk is determined by the multiple of the bottom line, right? So they call it EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax,
Mhm.
depreciation, and amortization. Everybody's focusing on that, which I did too for quite some time. And then I realized I had an aha moment saying, well, wait a minute. If I'm going to sell this or help someone sell this or teach them to sell it, they need to look at the risk, because if you have a high risk, your multiple's low. If you've de-risked the business, the multiple goes up. And so I'm able to help an organization not just scale, but to increase their value significantly by taking the risk out of the organization, which very few people actually focus on.
Okay. Okay. Now I want to do a quick exercise with you, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's pretend I'm your ideal client profile. I'm your ICP. Okay. 10
Yep.
to 150 plus million profitable company
Yes.
owner. Okay. Business
Yes.
owner. Now, marketing wise, how would I be able to find you in the first place?
Well, there's a couple things that I'm doing. Centers of influence is critical. So but there's so many of them. I've had a few fractional CFOs and partners of accounting firms that have been helpful to me over the years. Unfortunately, they've retired. You get forced out at 65 when you're in the accounting world. So some of my best COIs, centers of influences, have graduated into the next part of their life, which is a huge loss to me. Like Jim Redpath at Redpath CPAs in St. Paul. Great. And this guy, Larry Lundgren, who was a fractional CFO, and he and I ham and egged it. I found a client and I brought him in. He found a client, he brought me in. And so those were ways I grew my business. And then, so that group of getting out into the sea, meeting friends, but there's a lot of work to that, right? And then so that group is really really important in terms of how you will find me is through a referral, right? So you'll talk to your accountant or your attorney and say, hey, this is what I'm going through, and they'll say, "Oh, Cronin's the guy to help you with that," or they'll look at your financials and say, "Listen, you've got a really healthy company here, but it's not as valuable as I think you could be. We don't do that, but this guy Cronin really helps you grow the value of your business." So that's the primary way, and then it's just the marketing is getting out there. The second way, when I look at the history of my business, is 80% of my clients come through peer-to-peer introduction. So like this guy Brett Cobb down in Iowa, who runs a $450 million company. He introduced me to one of the guys on his board, and then he introduced me to a number of people in his peer group, right? And so once you get into a person who's a member of a peer group, they share you. They're proud to share you with their cohort people who are struggling. They'll look for a moment and say, someone's bemoaning this or that, and they'll say, "Hey, my guy, you should talk to my guy Paul." And so that's where most of my businesses come from over the years. Now, today I've been encouraged. My sons are mid-20s, and so they're into the social media niche. And my buddy Don Hachet has always been there. So using LinkedIn properly has been a challenge for me. I'm getting better at it. Using the social media apps, posting articles and posting short clips. I'm starting to do that. It's in the beginning, so I don't have a lot of history with it. I also have a TED Talk, and I'm looking to land stages to speak. I've got two TED Talks, so I'm looking forward to more stages, and I'm writing a book, and so writing a book, I'm about 80% done. Though that the founder's trap, that also will create some notoriety. So there's brand awareness, which is the long-term effective side of marketing, and then there's lead generation, which is the long-term efficient side of marketing, which is I need those things now. But it doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of groundwork as a coach to build a business and a reputation. But Dean Batchelor, who is the partner at Platinum Group, where I was a turnaround guy when I first met him, he says, Cronin, I asked him, I said, Dean, how do you get new clients all the time? He says, you find one, you make a friend, you do a great job, and you'll get more. That was his simplistic view of consulting and turnaround business and coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been true for me for 15 years.
Okay, now let's pretend I was referred to you, right, from your circle or your peers, or they're like, hey, you got to talk to Paul, right? So I talk with you. We have eventually I look at what you have on LinkedIn or website, whatever that looks like. That resonates with me. Okay, we went through the sales process, and there's alignment. Let's put it like that to simplify it. So we're gonna work together. Okay. You could have different offers. I want you to pick the main one here. Okay. So can you walk me through how does it look like to work with your business, right? Cornerstone 3 Inc. And what are the potential outcomes I can expect out of it?
Let's start with the last question first. My brand promise is that I will help you as your coach see the opportunities that, if you execute appropriately, will significantly grow the transferable value of your business. And I specifically use the word transferable because value is not value if no one wants it. And the reason why business owners are not transferring out, 70% of privately held companies are not transferring at all because they're not valuable. There's no transferable value in the eyes of the buyers. And the buyers, 70% of acquisitions are done through private equity firms, right? And these guys are trained to look at businesses, and they don't want to run them. They want to own them and grow them and then flip them into another, right? So they look at the business, and they look at the business's risk, which again, most coaches don't look at. So if you can address the risk of a healthy company, you can grow the transferable value of the business. So the number one brand promise is I'm going to significantly increase, help with, you and your team, help you significantly increase the transferable value of your business. So if your EBITDA is 3, and let's pretend you have a multiple of 3, you're worth 9 million. I come in there, I start working with you. Let's say your EBITDA doesn't even change from 3, but I help you de-risk the business. Now your EBITDA is 5. Well, we just went from 9 million to 15 million, right? So that's a $6 million gap. Now I helped the company do that, called MA Performance, in 1 year, and we did exactly that. Their cash was only 800,000. In 1 year we got it to 3.2 million cash. So that was a 4 times growth in EBITDA. And then we took the multiplier from 3.5 to 8.5, or 8, I guess it was, 4.5 times. So just imagine, and then he sold the business after 12 months. Just imagine how much, just do the math. How much value did that owner accrete in the time I worked with them? So that's my brand promise to owners, is I'm going to help you grow. And that's what matters most, the value of your business. And the reason why it's not transferable initially is because, and no one wants it, is because it's too much risk. So going back to your original question, so my program is about identifying them. The first thing I do is help them identify the gap. I call it the value gap. So there's 3 gaps I work on. Number 1 is your personal wealth gap, right? What do you need to become financially independent, right? Versus, and that number is easy. It's like in America, it's a portfolio at about 4% after tax. So if I say, how much money do you need to live on, after tax? So I had one client say 800,000. Well, that means they needed 20 million in a portfolio that produced 4%, right? I said, okay, how much have you saved? 1.5. Okay, our wealth gap is $18.5 million. So the first thing I do is help them understand their wealth gap. So now we have a goal. We have a BHAG, right? The second thing is, okay, what is your EBITDA right now? And is it best in class or is it not best in class, right? And that if it's not best in class, we have an opportunity to improve your EBITDA. That's called your profit gap. And the third gap is your value gap. So if you're best in class with a strong EBITDA, this is what a multiple will look like. If you're on the other end of it, this is what a multiple will look like. And this is the typical mean multiple of your industry. So I can do a value gap analysis right out in the beginning. So I have those three gaps, and we start with that, right? And I do a due diligence to I make sure that we know what we're working on, right? So that's usually a month to a month and a half, depending on how good their data is. I'll spend 6 to 8 weeks getting really clear about those gaps and defining them, and then I'll come in and I'll work with them every month. Now, what does that look like? We do a 2 to 3 day kickoff meeting, typically two, and every year we do an annual 2 day, right? And every quarter we do a quarterly plan because everything's broken into 90-day cadences. But I also meet with my clients once a month for a half day to make sure that they're getting done what they said they're going to get done along that 90-day path, and to solve any big items or to work on strategy. So I'm working with my clients monthly, but I'm doing it at different cadences with different meeting purposes. And so sometimes a half day, sometimes a full day, sometimes they're in person, sometimes they're online. But I'm working with them every single month to make sure that their journey to where we want to go, and it's typically a 24 to 36 month time frame that this takes. The MA performance situation I told Chris when we first met. I said, Chris, 1 year, that's a bit crazy. I'm not going to say no, we'll try. We did amazing things in that 1 year. And he did too, because he went out and found the buyer, the strategic buyer. That's not my job. But we did all the good work, so the strategic buyer saw that and gave him an amazing offer. But that's an outlier. Typically, it's going to be 3 years to get to touch everything, take care of all the problems, de-risk it, and really create enormous value from. Right now, I'm working with a client in New York. Last year they were 9 million. This year they're going to do 15 million. Our goal is to get to 50 million within 3 years. And the value creation we're going to create is going to be anywhere from 10 million to 80 million. And the gap between where we started and where it's going to be based on all the things we're going to do. I mean, just think about that. In 3 years, you go from 10 million to 80 million. That's life changing work. So that's what I focus on. Hopefully I didn't leave anything out. But
No, pretty clarifying. I really appreciate that because I was like, I was a high ticket sales closer for a landscape business coach.
yes,
And more often than not, I see a lot of guys out there in that industry that what they were trying to sell was a bunch of equipment. And on top of it, a glorified contact list because the business relied all of them to show up, right? So
right,
that's one thing that I understand. There's a lot of people out there, the founders that created a very high paying job, let's put it like that, right? Instead of a well oiled machine that works for them. Now,
yes,
I'm going to throw you a small curveball here, if
right,
you don't mind. Okay.
sure, no, go for it, yeah,
I mean, your work seems pretty hands on, right? You told me
yes,
yourself you're a one man band and you were in places that you were the CEO. So you had that machine doing all the things in the back end, right? You had employees and all that. Now, in the coaching space, sometimes I see a lot of coaches out there advocating against burnout, but they're burning out themselves because there are a lot of hats to wear. Okay,
yes, yes.
so how do you think about capacity? So don't stretch yourself too thin, Paul.
Capacity is one of, I have 3 chapters in my book on constraint management. So I think about capacity as constraint. And if you think about fluid dynamics, and where I live in St. Paul, when I first got here, there was a bridge called the Wakota Bridge, right on 494. And if you go south down to the Wakota Bridge, it's a 4-lane highway. You get to the bridge, it's only 2 lanes. On the other side of the bridge, it's 4 lanes, right? So when you think about that as a system, what's the flow rate of that system? It's pretty clear. It's 50%. It's 2 lanes, right? So all the beautiful things you do before the bridge and all the beautiful things you do after the bridge are meaningless. So take that metaphor and bring it to business. If I walk into, like, as a turnaround guy, when I was a turnaround guy, I walk into a business, I'm looking for the key constraint. right? The number one thing that's determining the flow rate of the whole business. And this is Eli Goldratt's book, The Goal, right? I mean, I learned it from Eli Goldratt. He wrote a number of other books, but you know, but in manufacturing, which is the easiest thing, it's like what is getting in the way? What's constraining the work, the flow of work? So I'm constantly looking at capacity as constraint management. And let me give you one example. So let's say you're a one machine shop, right? So you pay $1 million for a machine, right? And let's say you're running it, 8 hours a day. It's like, okay, your constraint is you're just running the damn thing 8 hours a day, right? So how do you get more out of that? How do you need to run it as close to 24 hours a day as you can with, you have to include maintenance, right? So what can I do to get more through that machine? Well, you can try to figure out. You can start early, you can stay late, right? You can actually have one shift, but some of the guys start early and some of the guys stay late, or you can do a second shift, right? So there's a number of ways you can exploit that machine. Now, but then what people stop thinking about is, okay, what kind of work are we putting through that machine? And I like to say, well, let's say that you're putting $250 work through the machine, you're putting $500 an hour work through the machine, or you're putting $1,000 an hour work through the machine. Well, if you look at the percentage of the work going through the machine, you've just defined another constraint, right? But the constraint's not in the machine. The machine's the machine. The constraint's in sales. It's like, hey, sales guys, go get $1,000 an hour work to put through that machine. Don't go get $250 an hour work to put through the machine, right? So now I can drive more value through that one item, right? Because the constraint is not the machine. The constraint is the sales and the type of work we're bringing in the door. So again, people don't think about this stuff, right? But and where the constraint is, well, it's very simple. The constraints in the marketplace or with my salespeople. So you're not going after the right customer, or you're not going after the right work, right?
Mm.
I'll tell. When I was a turnaround guy, I'd go in there and I'd say, okay, let's do a waterfall report on every customer and every product that we have, and we quickly find out we're losing cash on some work that we're doing, and sometimes it's consistent with the customer, so we fire their butt, right? Because
Mhm.
they're costing us money. As a turnaround guy, cash is king. If I fire a client that's causing us to spend more cash rather than a profit, I'm actually saving them cash. I'm actually a positive, right? So
Mhm.
again, the more you look at business and you start looking under the covers and you start looking at constraint management and capacity, that's the number one thing I start with.
Mm. Yeah, I love the frame you presented. You know, the analogy too. Pretty cool. Now, I want to shift gears for a second, Paul, because at the end of the day, I'm curious about where you're taking all this. You know, looking ahead, where do you see the business going? Are you thinking about scaling, hiring, or is there a next step you're excited about?
So, there's an old expression. I don't know if there's one in Brazil like this, but up here it's like, I want to eat my own dog food, right? So, I want to build a firm over the next 5 to 10 years where I get like-minded people I bring on that can eventually learn what I'm doing. It's not, again, it's not hard. It's really up here is how you use your brain and how you ask questions. And so training people to be inquisitive and asking questions and understanding that if you just get really simple about constraint management and capacity, and you just start asking other questions, right? Is that really a good customer for us? Is that really good work for us? Rather than just being so excited about anything, right? So I have to find the right coaches that or people that I can train to think the way I do. I've got the products, I've got the processes, I've got the procedures. They have to be readers, they have to be excited, they have to be able to work really well with people. But I'd like over the next decade to have, let's say, 10 people that I can put out into the marketplace and solve these problems because there's so many companies out there. At least 70% of the companies are not transacting. And I feel bad for a business owner who spent 3 decades to 4 decades in a business, and now they go to thinking that it's going to solve their life problem and they're going to be financially free, and they don't transact. 50% of businesses are transacted based on divorce, death, disease,
Mm.
disagreement, and I always forget the last one, but there's five, they're called the 5 Ds, right? So you lose, and if you're not ready, if you haven't done the things that I teach you to do, and that happens to you, again, you get 50%, then you're not going to get the financial freedom and the retirement that you thought you were going to get. So I want my legacy to be a firm that thinks the way I do and acts the way I do and solves the same problem that I do. And I need to find a bunch of people who are like-minded to come on board, and so we can do it together and have fun together. And I can then retire myself, or maybe sell my firm and eat my own dog food, right? Because I created something of value. So that's what I think I appreciate the question. That's my goal in this next decade. So.
You know, last time someone I mentioned eating their own dog food, they were like, "No,
Yeah.
I'm drinking my own champagne here."
I like that better. I like
I was
that.
like,
I want to move
"Okay,
the dog food to the champagne.
that sounds better."
Yeah,
Yeah, it sounds. You know what really caught my attention? What you told me, despite the fact that that's just a great plan to have. It's like having fun together. You know,
yeah,
some people
yeah.
they sometimes they forget about having fun at work, and they have this mindset of that is just work. So that's a powerful reminder. Now, of course, Paul, whenever we're aiming towards the next chapter, always something we're refining in the present. So, what are you currently trying to improve or tighten up in your business right now?
So again, I'll go back to what I said a little earlier. I don't want to be redundant, but it's just simply true. I need to, if I'm going to build a firm, I can't just fill my plate. I have to fill 10 plates. So marketing is my is my constraint, right? Using the same language. So the capacity of the firm is going to be based on two things, right? Uh, the marketing that in the selling in this is easy, right? Marketing is really hard. I mean, think about it. You have an owner who is going to work every day. You're not going to cold call them. You're not going to walk in their door, right? How do you get their attention? So the ability to do good marketing and get the attention of these people who again, they're great people, they're nose down, they're working hard, they don't even aren't even aware that, they're it's kind of like they're building a golden cage around themselves, right? And they're in the middle of it because they have, I mean, they think they're wealthy. They're making two, three, $400,000 a year, right? They have their house, they have their snowmobile, they have their cabin, they have their boat, they have their plane, right? Everything's great. But if they haven't solved the multiplier problem by de-risking, no one wants to buy their business. And so they don't have the second chapter figured out. And the biggest constraint to getting their attention is either they know it and they're denying it, but it's the identity that they have in and through the business, right? So my ability to get their attention, to speak to their unconscious mind, their subconscious mind, where their subconscious mind hears a statement from me or one of my members and my teammates and says, "Wait, what? If what I just heard is true, I need to learn more." Right? That's the marketing I'm looking for. I need somebody to help me solve that marketing problem where they actually where my core customer hears that statement and they say, "Wait, what?" Because then when I get into a conversation with them, right, solving their problem, and that's my closing ratio is 50% or better, depending on, if they're truly interested, right? But that the whole thing is marketing. So that's number one. The second thing, once I get my plate full, right? The second thing is then replacing myself with talent that think and act like I do with owners to solve that problem. So it's two things. The marketing is the constraint, and then the recruiting and onboarding and training. I mean, I already have the systems, the processes, and everything like that. But finding the right people who are like-minded that want to do what I'm doing. Those are the two things that I need to do to grow my practice.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now, and I love that, by the way, and especially throwing out some numbers too, right, on the closing rate and all that. As a sales guy, I always love to know that. Now,
Yeah, selling's not the problem.
yeah,
Marketing is
and
the problem.
okay, and Paul, if someone listening wants to connect with you or follow your work. And we're going to have all the description in the description, all the links. Okay. So where can people find you and connect with you? Like the best way to do it?
My LinkedIn profile is, Paul A. Cronin. There's another Paul Cronin out there, but Paul A. Cronin on LinkedIn. That's my best place. Cornerstone 3 Inc. Is my website. So those are two places. And if you want to email me direct, it's paul.cronin@cornerstone3 Inc. So, those are three ways to get with me. I'm not that hard to find.
Yeah. He's at St. Paul near that bridge.
I'm in
I'm
St.
just
Paul.
kidding.
I'm in St. Paul, yeah. You
Okay.
know what? I'm going to be buying a house in Sarasota soon, though, too. My kid just graduated, and I'm going to have a second home down in Florida. So you'll get to know me down there as well.
Okay. Florida. Okay. You
Yeah.
know, there were a few things you shared today that I feel the need to highlight. I'll put it like that. When I mentioned the consultant bit about my dad, you were like, yeah, respect your dad, all good, right? But I don't have all the answers. And consultants, more often than not, they position themselves as having all the answers, and that never sat down with you properly. I love how that puts you in a humble position. Like, I'm always learning, right? And as much as you are so experienced, you have like a track record that speaks for itself. You're still in that, student position, always trying to move forward, right? So the growth mindset is still there. I really love that. Also, when you were talking about coaching and why you wanted coaching, it was like I would love to be part of a team. That's what mostly drove you, right? So that's also interesting. Another thing, the value driven and not just bottom line or EBITDA. When you were talking about how to provide value for businesses, it's not just about profit, right? There's more to it than that. And the last but not least, the bridge analogy about capacity. I throw you a curveball, you throw me a great analogy. I really like that. This is just my long-winded way of saying, Paul, that I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate you being here and sharing so openly today. Okay, it was great having you on.
Thanks, Pedro. I appreciate meeting you and the opportunity to be on your podcast. And yeah, I think if we were a little closer, we could go out and have a few cocktails together and enjoy it.
Well, Brazil is Brazil, right? So that's always something, but you never know. Maybe that's what's next for us, right?
That's right. Well, you got me thinking about champagne rather than dog food, so I appreciate that.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.